When was the last time Harley Davidson felt unstoppable? Not respected, not admired, untouchable. For decades, this American icon meant more than motorcycles. It meant identity. The low thunder of its engines carried authority, not speed. Riders did not buy Harleys for efficiency. They bought them to belong. Families passed the brand down like tradition. Logos became tattoos. Ownership became loyalty, and loyalty became belief. At its peak, Harley did not chase relevance, it defined it. That confidence felt permanent. But permanence is fragile, because the same devotion that built Harley also quietly narrowed its future. And that story began far earlier than anyone expected. Long before Harley Davidson carried meaning, it carried risk. In the early 1900s, there were no banners, no chrome floors, no myth to protect the name. There was only a small wooden shed in Milwaukee. Inside it, William Harley and the Davidson brothers worked shoulder to shoulder, surrounded by grease, scattered tools, and half-finished engines. They were not visionaries chasing legacy. They were mechanics chasing solutions. Motorcycles of that era were unreliable by nature. Frames cracked, engines overheated. Breakdowns were expected, not rare. Harley and the Davidsons believed riders deserved something better. Not faster, not flashier, stronger, more dependable. A machine that could survive broken pavement, long distances, and daily punishment without surrendering. Their ambition was quiet and practical. Fix what fails, reinforce what bends, build something that lasts. Progress came slowly. Engines were torn apart and rebuilt by hand. Parts were reshaped, tested, discarded, then tried again. Money was scarce. Mistakes were frequent. Every improvement was earned through repetition, not investment. They listened closely to riders because failure left no room for ego. Craftsmanship was not a slogan. It was the difference between surviving another season or disappearing entirely. That mindset hardened into principle. From the beginning, Harley Davidson favored durability over spectacle, usefulness over novelty. And if Harley Davidson has ever meant something to you, not just as a motorcycle, but as a symbol, hit the like button, drop a hype in the comment, and subscribe. That support is exactly what keeps us committed to telling these stories with honesty, depth, and respect. Because these motorcycles were not designed to impress crowds. They were designed to keep moving when others quit. Riders noticed, trust followed. But inside that strength, something subtle formed. Innovation moved cautiously. Change came in measured steps. The company learned to refine what it understood rather than chase what it did not. At the time, that restraint felt responsible. It never felt limiting. Yet even at this early stage, something important was forming. The way Harley Davidson solved problems began to define how it would continue solving them for decades. And as these early machines slowly earned trust, the workshop was no longer just building motorcycles. It was preparing to prove itself. The breakthrough did not arrive quietly. It arrived under pressure. As Harley Davidson's early motorcycles proved they could survive daily use, the company entered a far harsher arena, racing. In the early 1900s, races were not spectacles built for entertainment. They were public trials of engineering, long distances, brutal surfaces, machines pushed until something failed. Victory meant more than applause. It meant proof. And Harley began collecting proof. Each win carried weight. Riders watched motorcycles endure punishment without collapsing. Competitors took notice. These were no longer experimental machines assembled in a shed. They were durable, capable, and competitive. Racing delivered something advertising never could. Credibility earned in plain sight, measured mile after mile. Inside the company, the shift was immediate. Survival gave way to confidence. Orders increased, production scaled. What had once been a local operation started to stretch outward. Dealerships followed. Recognition moved beyond Milwaukee. Harley Davidson was becoming a national manufacturer, not by ambition alone, but by results. Racing success reshaped decision-making. Every victory reinforced a simple belief. The formula worked. Refine it, strengthen it, stay disciplined. Performance became validation, reliability became reputation. A reinforcing cycle took hold, where wins fueled sales and sales funded more competition. Momentum brought certainty. With growth came a new self-image. Harley no longer saw itself as one builder among many. It began to see itself as a benchmark. Others reacted. Harley set the tone. That confidence pushed progress forward, but it also narrowed perspective. Innovation followed familiar directions. Change became careful. Reinvention felt unnecessary. At the time, that restraint seemed wise. Racing had taught Harley Davidson how to win, and winning became its reference point. Performance shaped perception. Perception shaped identity. And as riders connected the name with strength and success, motorcycles stopped being products alone. They became symbols. But momentum has a subtle effect. What begins as proof of ability can slowly become proof of identity. Performance was no longer just something Harley Davidson delivered. It was something the brand relied on. And as recognition grew, the motorcycles started to mean more than machines alone. If performance, racing, or early engineering credibility influenced how you saw Harley Davidson, share your experience in the comments. Perspectives like yours add meaning that history alone cannot provide. And if this part of the story resonated, a like and a subscription tell us to keep going deeper. At a certain point, Harley Davidson stopped being something riders purchased. It became something they joined. The motorcycle itself turned into a statement. Conversations shifted away from specifications and efficiency. What mattered was presence, the sound at idle, the weight rolling beneath you, the feeling of stretching a ride across empty miles with nothing pressing from behind. A Harley was not chosen to arrive sooner. It was chosen to be recognized. The culture did not arrive by strategy. It formed organically, then accelerated. Riders gathered, groups traveled together, rallies became annual pilgrimages rather than events. Leather, patches, chrome, and scars were not decoration. They were signals. Riding a Harley meant stepping into a shared identity built around freedom, endurance, and defiance without explanation. Harley Davidson sensed this shift early. Instead of selling machines, the company began offering belonging. Advertising moved away from engineering and toward faces, stories, and emotion. The motorcycle became the entry point to a community that promised loyalty, recognition, and continuity. The bond hardened quickly. Owners defended the brand instinctively. Imperfections were excused. Alternatives were dismissed. Choosing another manufacturer felt less like preference and more like disloyalty. Harley was no longer competing for attention. It was commanding allegiance. That allegiance shaped the company from within. Design choices leaned toward familiarity. Adjustments came cautiously. Innovation passed through tradition before reaching production. If it did not sound right, feel right, or look right, it was rejected. History became guidance, then expectation. At the time, this felt unbreakable. While others chased trends, Harley remained insulated by devotion. The culture protected the company. Each rally, each shared mile, reinforced the legend. But identity, once fixed, resists motion. And as meaning outweighed machinery, evolution quietly became more difficult. Still, none of that felt dangerous. It felt like arrival. And with the symbol firmly established, Harley Davidson stepped into the next period, where dominance seemed natural, loyalty felt permanent, and the future appeared already secured. At its height, Harley Davidson did not respond to demand. Demand responded to Harley Davidson. The company stood as the unquestioned authority in heavyweight motorcycles. Its shape was instantly recognizable. Its exhaust note carried weight and presence. Its culture reached far beyond the machines themselves. Dealerships stayed busy. Waiting lists became normal. Ownership felt inevitable. You did not ask whether you would own a Harley. You decided when. Inside the organization, confidence was absolute. Years of mechanical success, cultural influence, and financial strength reinforced a single conviction: Harley Davidson understood its riders better than anyone alive. Leadership trusted the formula that had delivered results decade after decade. Large displacement engines, familiar proportions, a sound and feel that never needed explanation. Change was not resisted. It simply felt unnecessary. From the outside, that confidence appeared justified. Rivals could match performance figures. Some could even match build quality. None could replicate the bond Harley had forged. This was no longer competition between products. It was separation between belief systems. Harley Davidson did not occupy a segment. It defined one. The brand felt less like a manufacturer and more like an American institution. Dealers benefited from that certainty. Showrooms became meeting points rather than sales floors. Transactions were driven by reputation more than persuasion. Many riders returned again and again, purchasing multiple motorcycles without considering alternatives. The decision had been made years earlier, reinforced by loyalty and habit. That feeling of permanence influenced every choice. When a company believes it represents the market itself, attention drifts away from the margins. Emerging trends feel distant. New technology seems optional. Younger riders appear secondary. Harley Davidson was not losing customers, and as long as that remained true, urgency stayed low. The early warnings were easy to dismiss. The audience was aging. New riders admired the image more than the product. Competitors experimented while Harley refined. Refinement became routine. Tradition solidified into policy. In that moment, nothing felt wrong. Harley Davidson had reached a rare position where dominance felt natural and the future seemed settled. Confidence hardened into certainty. But dominance has a quiet cost. When success feels guaranteed, adaptation becomes optional. And as markets shifted and new generations emerged, the first small cracks began to appear. Subtle at first, easy to dismiss, but signaling that permanence was never promised. If Harley Davidson felt untouchable to you at this moment in history, pause for a second. What happens to a brand when belief replaces attention? Drop your thought below, because the assumptions riders carried forward would soon be tested in ways no one expected. By the closing years of the 1990s, Harley Davidson projected absolute confidence. Dealership floors were crowded. Orders stretched months into the future. Riders did not merely buy the motorcycles, they pledged allegiance. To the outside world, Harley had cracked a code others never solved, transforming steel and chrome into belonging, ritual, and identity. Yet the shift had already begun, not in factories, not in showrooms, but in the people walking past them. Harley's strongest supporters were growing older, gradually and almost unnoticed. The riders who discovered the brand during the cultural surge of the 1970s and 1980s were settling into middle age. Many remained devoted, many still rode long miles, but the pipeline behind them was thinning. New riders were not arriving fast enough to replace those aging out. The world that shaped younger buyers no longer resembled the one Harley was built for. Crowded cities replaced endless highways. Convenience replaced permanence. Freedom became something rented, shared, or postponed. To emerging riders, large cruisers felt heavy, costly, and unforgiving. What once symbolized rebellion now carried the weight of inheritance. Meanwhile, competitors moved quickly. Japanese and European manufacturers focused on agility, efficiency, and approachability. Lighter frames, modern engineering, and dependable performance reshaped expectations. Technology that eased ownership became standard elsewhere, while Harley leaned deeper into familiarity. To loyalists, this consistency felt reassuring. To outsiders, it felt immovable. Inside the company, confidence muted concern. Sales still climbed. Market leadership remained intact. Demand continued to outpace supply. From the executive floor, there appeared to be no urgency to change course. After all, Harley Davidson had always survived by staying true. What leadership failed to notice was that devotion was slowly narrowing reach. The same loyalty that once expanded the brand was quietly defining its limits. The warning did not arrive as failure, but as absence. At first, these changes seemed temporary, fluctuations, not threats. But how Harley Davidson chose to respond to them would quietly shape everything that followed, and not in the way its leaders expected. By the opening years of the 2000s, the signals were no longer subtle. Harley Davidson could see the shift forming. Internal data told a clear story. The customer base was aging, growth was slowing, and younger riders were looking elsewhere. Inside design studios and engineering offices, alternatives were already taking shape. Lighter platforms, modern proportions, concepts meant to lower the barrier for first-time buyers. The ideas were present. The commitment was not. For generations, Harley's survival had depended on mastery of a single formula. Large displacement engines, substantial weight, a presence defined as much by sound as by shape. That formula had rescued the company before, and leadership believed repeating it was safer than redefining it. Change felt like risk. Innovation moved forward only after passing one unspoken test. Does this still feel unmistakably Harley? If the answer was unclear, progress slowed. Concepts that stretched the brand's image were softened, delayed, or quietly shelved. Technical advancement became secondary to protecting familiarity. Instead of widening what Harley Davidson could represent, leadership focused on preserving what it had always been. This was not denial, it was apprehension. There was concern about alienating longtime riders, anxiety about weakening a culture built over decades, a belief that adaptation would dilute identity rather than extend it. But identity, once rigid, loses flexibility. Harley continued investing heavily in heavyweight cruisers as global preferences shifted toward efficiency and versatility. International opportunities were discussed, but rarely pursued with urgency. Electric and performance-driven projects remained peripheral, treated as experiments rather than commitments. The company did not lack resources or talent. It lacked willingness to release assumptions shaped by a different era. As competitors accelerated, Harley hesitated. Each cautious decision reduced future options. Each familiar choice reinforced a narrowing audience. And slowly, almost quietly, the cost of those choices began to appear, not in headlines at first, but in patterns that would become impossible to ignore next. When sales fell, showrooms emptied, and Harley Davidson's influence began to slip. By the closing years of the 2000s, the illusion of stability finally broke. The decline did not arrive as a single dramatic failure. It unfolded gradually, measured in quarterly reports and shrinking forecasts. Sales softened, then slipped further. Waiting lists vanished. Unsold motorcycles lingered on showroom floors. Dealers who once rationed inventory now struggled to justify ordering more. For the first time in generations, Harley Davidson was no longer leading the market. It was responding to it. If you were watching Harley Davidson during this period, pause for a moment and ask yourself, when a brand built on leadership starts reacting instead, is that a correction or the first sign of something deeper failing? Let us know where you land in the comment, because this shift marked the moment the story changed direction. The financial crisis intensified the pressure, but it did not create the problem. High-priced motorcycles became harder to justify as spending tightened, yet the deeper issue ran far below economic cycles. New riders were entering the market and passing Harley by without hesitation. Competitors advanced quickly to fill the space. Japanese manufacturers claimed entry-level and mid-range segments with accessible pricing and dependable engineering. European brands attracted riders drawn to performance, technology, and contemporary design. Urban mobility and electric concepts began reshaping expectations, and Harley found itself arriving late to a conversation already underway. The data left little room for interpretation. Domestic market share contracted. Overseas growth failed to deliver. Revenue flattened, then retreated. Long-standing dealerships closed, some after decades of operation. Towns that once gathered around Harley events grew noticeably quieter. The contrast was striking. This was the brand that once defined American motorcycling. The standard others chased. Now it was losing ground across multiple fronts at once. Longtime riders sensed the shift early. Some waited, trusting the company to adapt. Others quietly moved on, unwilling to pay rising premiums for diminishing relevance. Younger buyers, the next generation, largely looked elsewhere. Harley Davidson still carried history and symbolism, but authority had slipped away. What remained was uncertainty. Each report confirmed the same reality. Strength without relevance offers no protection. And as the decline continued, it exposed a deeper fracture, not just in sales, but in identity. And next, we will explore how this tension began to strike at the very identity of Harley Davidson. How the company that once defined motorcycling now wrestled with its own purpose, trapped between legacy and evolution. By the time decline could no longer be debated, Harley Davidson faced a challenge no restructuring plan could resolve. The company had lost clarity about its future self. Every attempt at evolution triggered resistance. New platforms, emerging technology, unfamiliar audiences, each step forward felt like an attack on something deeply held. Harley Davidson was not simply a manufacturer. It had become memory, ritual, and identity. For many riders, it symbolized independence, rebellion, and belonging, and that made change emotional. Longtime customers feared watching the soul of the brand dissolve. Executives feared losing the only buyers still showing up. Inside the organization, fault lines formed. One side argued survival demanded reinvention. The other believed reinvention would destroy the very essence worth preserving. Both perspectives carried truth, and together they created paralysis. Electric models, lighter machines, global outreach. Every future-facing move felt like betrayal. Yet every retreat into tradition widened the gap between Harley and the world evolving around it. The company became trapped between honoring its past and securing its future, unable to commit fully to either path. The hesitation became visible. Bold announcements were softened, strategies launched cautiously, then quietly adjusted. Promising ideas were tested, but never embraced with conviction. Harley spoke of renewal while moving as though afraid of crossing its own boundaries. Even the rider community fractured. Some welcomed evolution, hoping the brand would grow alongside them. Others rejected it entirely, demanding permanence in a changing world. What once united generations now divided them. Harley Davidson had built one of the most powerful identities in modern business. But identity, when locked in place, becomes weight. If this video spoke to you, show some love by hitting like, and for those who want to go deeper, become a member to get early access to everything new. The company was no longer measured against competitors alone, but against its own history. Each comparison reinforced what Harley had been, not what it could become. The legend overshadowed possibility. This was no longer a story about motorcycles. It was a question of meaning. And when survival requires transformation, but transformation threatens purpose, even the strongest brands can become trapped by their own success. Harley Davidson's story was never about simple failure. It was a rise fueled by genuine innovation, bold risk, and unmatched cultural influence. Few brands have ever meant so much to so many for so long. Harley did not just build motorcycles. It built identity, belonging, and freedom on two wheels. That is what made the decline so painful. The mistake was not incompetence or lack of vision. It was trust placed too deeply in the past. The identity that once made Harley untouchable slowly became something it could no longer question or reshape. Strength turned into certainty. Certainty hardened into rigidity. As markets evolved, Harley focused on preserving what it had been instead of fully committing to what it needed to become. Loyalty remained strong, but relevance weakened. Tradition endured, while adaptation hesitated. By the time the consequences surfaced clearly, the room to respond had already narrowed. This is the quiet danger of success. When something works long enough, it begins to feel permanent. Beliefs solidify. Change feels like betrayal instead of opportunity. Harley Davidson did not struggle because it lacked history. It struggled because it trusted that history too much. And that lesson reaches far beyond motorcycles. And if you are not done with this road yet, the next video is waiting. Ride with us by subscribing. And if you want to support what we do and get early access to new stories, consider becoming a member. A like on this video helps more than you think.